Welcome to Distilled Down. I'm your host, Andy Rieger. We're sitting in the beautiful historical exhibit here at the Rieger Co. Factory of Fun.
Factory of Fun.
Sitting next to a friend and operating partner of Rieger Co., the international man of mystery that we have on our team, Mr. Steve Olson. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Right. International man of mystery.
It's a very endearing title.
Yeah.
Only one man in history has ever been adorned with that title.
Yeah, I don't think I can live up to it.
You're number two. All right, Steve, you've had an incredibly robust career in the, let's just call it the alcohol field across many different segments within. Try to dumb it down for all of us to let us all know who you are, how you got to where you are, and how you gained the level of knowledge and inner workings of your life becoming to the level that you are across the globe.
How much time do we have exactly?
That's my book. You have about 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay, that's my autobiography. However,
it's a video autobiography, by the way.
I learned just yesterday that I am a test question for new staff here at Rieger. So I guess we have to figure out a way to make this concise, don't we? I guess it all began with me working in the restaurant business, the hospitality industry, which I have my entire grown life. I fell in love with it. And while I was working my way through college, it became more than just a job. It became a passion. And I realized very early that my calling was to research, dig deeper, understand wine, beer, spirits, everything liquid, everything service-oriented, and of course food as well. And as I designed and opened restaurants throughout my early career, it became more and more apparent that my calling was to continue working in the beverage side of the field. And also I worked with a really great chef early in my career, Christopher Gross, who always said to me, now is the moment of the celebrity chef. And he was one of those in that movement, when he was top 10 in Aspen and all of that. And he said, you have an opportunity to do something similar with wine. It's the future. And he saw the future happening. It was really amazing how he would push me that way. And even though we were, breakfast, lunch, and dinner working in that restaurant every minute of our lives, he would still say, yeah, but you need to do the wine, do the wine, do the wine. And I did. And everything else as well. But opened a number of restaurants. That was my calling and my passion. But I never lost track of how I would use that expertise and that work to build my byline so that I could write my articles and do my research and have my TV show and the things that were important so I could keep sharing, because that's really what it was about to me. As a teacher, I always wanted to share the information with other people. And over the course of my career, I had the great opportunity of, working with countries, working with major corporations, working with tiny producers, learning more and more, working in the dirt, but also sharing that with sommeliers, bartenders, chefs, servers, consumers all over the world. And over time, actually very early, I started developing my own techniques and ways of teaching and sharing to make it easier for people, to understand how to taste or how to evaluate the way we do as professionals, but not needing the information, just having the built-in tools to do it and sharing that information with people. Many, many years ago, we started a school because there were a group of us that felt as though it was our way of giving back to an industry that had been very good to us. We created Beverage Alcohol Resource, which became the bartender certification for the world, so to speak.
More or less equivalent to the master, what people know and recognize as Master Sommelier for wine. You created it for professionalizing the bartending industry.
Very much like that. I mean, I think that's a fair metaphor. We would never say that because those are very respected institutions that we are part of as well. But that's really the idea. We realized in 2005 that there was no certification. There's no way of saying, as a bartender, I know this, and I'm this good, and I can work in these places. And so we felt like there needed to be a standardization, a certification. We needed to set the bar. We're always talking about raising the bar. How about if we...
No pun intended.
Oh, pun intended. In this case. And we did that, but then it evolved into something much grander. But, it became, the master's level became the certification that the great bartenders were coming for. And it must be understood, it's not a bartending school. It's like a finishing school for great bartenders. The best bartenders in the world come to us to take their talents and their skills to the highest level. And we don't tell them what to do. We share with them what we've learned, and we're rewriting it every year. It's always cutting edge stuff so that they can take their knowledge level much deeper. But along the way, we also created another program called Bar Smarts, where, believe it or not, we've now certified over 40,000 bartenders globally at this advanced level where you don't have to be a master. You can just learn everything you need to know to be a good bartender.
And that's online?
It's online. It has changed recently. Pernod Ricard has turned it into a more internal thing. It's no longer our program. We're working on our own program because it serves as the prerequisite for the advanced bar 5-day, the one that you've heard about. But I mean, that's a big part of my life, as you well know.
Sure.
And Ryan's life, of course. Ryan, our co-founder here, our partner, Ryan went through the school and is a master. So as a matter of fact,
one of few.
We have 4 graduates working here now, 2 of which we sent through the school, one of whom was a graduate, and you met him separately and went, no, he's one of my guys, and now he's our director of operations, Joey. So, we have a great group of people who have been through this school, and it's a big part of my life. As you know, I also, along the way, categories like gin, which when I started working, there were 3 gins basically available, and I made it my mission to make people aware of how important gin was historically and in our repertoire, which is how I started working with Tom in the first place at Tanqueray, which is how...
No. You have to talk about that a little bit very briefly. How did you start working formally with Tom at Tanqueray?
When
that is the legendary master distiller who is an operating partner here now.
Who is also one of our closest friends in the world and one of the most amazing human beings on the planet. It's a great story. I'll give a little bit of background to it. In 1992, I left Christopher and in Phoenix to go back east, and I opened a place called the Mayflower Inn, Washington, Connecticut, consulting situation, set up their whole program, went on to win, Relais Chateau, 4 stars in the New York Times, grand award-winning wine list from the Wine Spectre. We did everything they wanted us to do. The Forbes 5-star award, which at the time was mobile, but became Forbes while we were in it. I moved back to New York City, and I was consulting in New York City, opening some restaurants, when I hooked up with Danny Meyer and Tom Colicchio, and we created Gramercy Tavern. And I was deeply honored to be included in that project and be allowed to design the service and the wines and all the beverages. But when I say that, understand that it was a collaborative team effort, that even though that was my thing and what I designed, everything was done with Danny and Tom because it was this collaborative thought process. And during that time, actually, I even went to Paris and worked at Taillemot to learn more about what they considered the whole world considers Taillemot the greatest service restaurant in the world, 3-star Michelin. I went there and worked so I could figure out what the best service in the world was and what that meant to us when we were trying to make it more friendly, less professional, but less pretentious and much more friendly. That was Gramercy's that's what we did.
Professional, but not pretentious.
Exactly. And very warm, kind, welcoming. That was our thing. And that's what we wanted to do, is show that you can make that kind of food with that kind of service, with that kind of wine, with that kind of program, cocktails, everything, and yet be nice about it and not have this attitude. And that's what we did. And it's still one of the greatest restaurants in the world, and I'm, so proud of it. And
it's amazing, by the way, in 2023, to think that restaurants operated with a pretentious mentality. Because nowadays, any restaurant that operates with a pretentious mentality, well, specifically in Kansas City at least, you would get skewered. And so the idea that was a highly sought after trait for some is...
For us, it was
very bizarre to think.
We changed the industry with that. I mean, Danny had done it at Union Square Cafe in a way that nobody thought was possible. And if you went there going, oh, New York Times 3-star restaurant, you're like, this isn't a 3-star. And it's like, exactly. The food is, but they're so nice there.
Right.
You just can't, this can't be a 3-star. And Danny had done that, but now we were going to do it like at an even higher level if that's possible. And that doesn't make it better than Union Square, just different.
For the viewers, if you can't tell, Steve has no emotion about anything that he ever does.
No, I'm not happy.
All right, so the restaurant. So you're getting soda. This is need to know about.
We're getting back to Tom. So I after working with Danny and Tom for a couple of years and getting Gramercy up and running and so forth, it was time for me to go back to my consulting. And I had made an agreement with them, no consulting while I'm doing Gramercy. That was our focus. For 2 years, that's all I did, basically. And as soon as I went back into my teaching and other work, I actually was asked, it was a literary thing, and I was asked to have this group of spirits experts, and I said, well, they're going to taste blind if it's me. So I did this blind tasting with these great spirits experts to show quality of gin, type of gin, style of gin, teach blind tasting. And as it turned out in this tasting that I led, the director of Shiflett and Somerset was in the room as part of it, but not participating, watching.
This was done in New York City.
This was in 1994 or 5 in New York City. And he heard me teaching.
I don't think I wasn't drinking gin yet.
No, probably not. I was. It got me through college for sure. Yes. But at that point, the bottom line is they came to me and said, if you can do that for trade, or you can do that for, journalists, is it possible to do that for consumers? And I said, well, it would take a lot of work. We'd have to refigure it. But yeah, probably. So I started working on a program which we tested to great success, which eventually became a consumer mentoring program, teaching people how, this is 1995, how to blind taste gin at room temperature as a professional does, and then how to make classic cocktails in your home using fresh juices and proper techniques in 1995. This is unheard of. Doesn't exist anywhere. And that was, Tanqueray hired me to do that. And I had always been a fan, and I would never talk about something I don't believe in, but it's like, I'm not going to tell them Tanqueray's better. They're going to decide for themselves. I'll do a blind tasting and show it to them. And they'll all pick Tanqueray. Well, oh, that's dangerous. I said, watch. If they know how to taste and evaluate, they will choose Tanqueray. And they did, of course, because it's world-class and perfectly distilled. And there's this guy in the UK that's making it by the name of Tom Nicol, who I believe you know. And anyway, some years later, after working with them and becoming a consultant and creating educational programs and growing this thing globally, it was time. The industry had changed. It was time to bring new gins in. We were thinking differently in the way we thought about food. Farmers markets were becoming, the norm. People were looking for more flavor. And we decided we needed a new gin. And we worked on a project called Tanqueray 10. And through Tanqueray 10, I met the team. And I'd already been working with the master distillers there. But I didn't know this guy named Tom Nicol yet. And it turns out they were all the guys talking this stuff. But Tom was the guy...
Roughly what year was this?
Making this stuff. This was 1998.
Okay.
Not roughly. I remember it clearly. It was also when I had my TV show on the Food Network. At the same time, I was working on this brand. And we finally launched it in 2000 to great critical success. It was, interestingly enough, just a few months before Hendrick's launched. So all of a sudden, we went from just a few gins, which were mostly London Dry in style. Even Plymouth is really a London Dry in style. And they were the only gins out there. And then all of a sudden, Tanqueray 10 and Hendrick's, which just pushed the envelope to the furthest place. And we all thought, oh my God, the gin category is exploding. It's so exciting. And of course, it took, another decade before we had 20 brands in the market. Now we have 4,000. But at that time, we thought we were really pushing the envelope. But shortly after that, I was traveling. I was in Spain. I was doing cocktail clinics. They'd asked me to come to Spain and teach about gin and do these cocktail clinics. And I said, I need, and Tom Nicol, I need the guy who made Tanqueray 10 here. These guys need to meet him. That's how we do things. And I know you know the story, but at the time, Tom Nicol had never spoken in front of an audience in his life. I didn't care. I'd been working with his former boss, Sean Phillip, who was a brilliant distiller and went on to become he was already a whiskey blender, but he went to that role and Tom moved up. And I'm like, give me him. I don't know. I worked with him for 10 minutes when we were working, no, more than that, but when we were working on Take Rate 10, but he was a distiller. And we had the greatest time. As a matter of fact, we love Tom Nichols so much, we invented a cocktail in his name. Now imagine, this is about 2000. Had to be somewhere right in 2001 or 2. And it wasn't 2001 because that would have been September 11th. So it had to be 2002. We created a cocktail called Tom Nickel Deconstructed. Because at the time, Ferran Adria was going crazy with the deconstructed food. And we were in Spain. And we did a dinner with Ferran Adria. And we invented a cocktail designed to match with a course where we took all the ingredients of Take Rate 10 out and then re-added them back in different ways. So imagine this crazy, citrus, beautiful up drink with a chamomile foam on top. It's insanity. And I swear to God, I think Tom cried when he saw it on the menu that it was his drink, his name. As a matter of fact, he'll tell you the story, but some years later, he and Jillian came for the first time to New York. And I took them to the Manhattan Cocktail Classic. And I brought them in the front doors of the Manhattan Cocktail Classic. And right there, right inside the front door, is Leo de Graaf mixing up Tom Nickel. And it says, the Tom Nickel up there. And I swear to God.
And Jillian, his wife, was very impressed for the first time, probably.
She was so impressed. And it was like we were able to show her what Tom Nickel meant to us.
So what kind of relationship did you have with Tom on a go-forward basis, though? Because, that's 2002, and we all didn't get in touch with Tom until 2015.
Yeah, decade.
So what was your relationship like in that midterm?
Tom and I became very close immediately. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the back bar on, if there's any other Tanqueray product up there, chances are he and I worked on it together. Whether it was Malacca, whether it was Old Tom Gin, we had a lot of fun creating taking old recipes, mostly stuff that we learned about that Charles Tanqueray might have dabbled in or even released, that we went, yeah, but what would it have been like then, and what does that equate to now? And of course, you look at these recipes, nobody could ever make anything from it except Tom Nickel.
Of course.
Because Tom could figure out what that really meant.
Well, I'll never forget that when he talked about some of these original recipes, that he was able to read the original transcribing from Charles Tanqueray. And he's like, yeah, it was ridiculous how I had to try to recreate it, because it was like a handful of these.
I thought that's where you're
3.5 handfuls of those. A scoop of this. And
a glass of
like,
this. A bucket of this. It's like, what is that even mean? And only Tom could experiment and work through that and figure out how to make it perfect. He's a genius. And we became very, very close. And I don't remember exactly what it was. He does. He brought it up the other night when we were talking. But there was a point where, and I guess it must have been around 2011 or 12. And I say that because that would have been shortly after we launched Vita. And I remember that Vita was out because Ron Cooper and I and our Michael Gardner at Del Maguey, we were thinking about doing some other things as part of our portfolio as we were building Del Maguey. And I had other projects working, and I went to Tom. We were together doing an event. Actually, we were both speaking in London at a big event, and we reached out to each other. Hey, man, I heard you speaking, and we got to get together and have a pint. That was our thing, and we always did. And so we found each other, and we had a pint. And I said that day, if I were to want to make a gin and I had a distillery, would you consider coming to work with me and doing that? And I'll never forget his words. I don't believe I'm allowed to.
You are.
I am. I'm not going to do the Scottish accent, although you've heard me do it if I have enough gin in me. But he actually said, in a fucking heartbeat. It was his exact response. And we laughed about it. And we laughed about it again several times after that. Remember that day? And so when Ryan and Pick first came to me when they were working on the whiskey blend, because Pick had uncovered that detail about the then BATF ruling about sherry being in Kansas City whiskeys, and me being the sherry guy, one of my other things that I did, at the time and that I love and still loved, when they came to me, and we started working together on it, and then later, you were involved reluctantly, but then when I met you, it was like, okay, if this guy's involved, I want to be involved. You remember how that kind of went, and we kind of, you tell the story way better than I do, but I remember how you weren't going to be involved at all, but you were just happy that your name and your great-great-great-great-grandfather's company might make a comeback, whatever. But it was, going to happen without you. You didn't want to do this, if I recall correctly. But look at you now. I'm so proud of you, man. But I remember saying to you early that, I think it would be a good idea for us to make gin, because we're never going to release a whiskey before its time, and we're never going to use little barrels, and we're never going to use wood chips, and we're never going to do that crap. We're going to do it right, and that means it's going to be 4 or 5 years before we can even talk about it. And while we're completely transparent, and we love the idea of blending, and it's part of the art form, and we love our Kansas City whiskey, just happen to have some right here.
Nice plug.
Come on, it's really what started the whole thing. And it's what we do, and it's our statement of, there's a whiskey you guys didn't know about. But I mentioned to you, I thought we should make gin. And how we going to do that kind of thing? It's like, well, Tom is one of my friends, and you guys all thought it was full of shit. You thought it was Olson. You didn't believe me.
No.
I never made a big deal of it. I just thought, Tom did say he would want to work with me if we did this,
So it's 2012, and I get introduced to you for the first time while I'm purely helping with this business plan. And at that point, I had already more or less conformed the original idea away from a bar that made alcohol to a manufacturing company, as I thought it was something that could be more successful. And when we spoke to you, I'll never forget that you loved that idea and that mentality.
That was huge.
Just like Dave Pickerel, when we spoke to him, both of you were like, oh, the idea of bringing this back as a manufacturer is fantastic. Like, it sounds a really exciting project. And both you and Dave at the time were like, oh, and the original family is going to be involved. So it's very authentic. This is incredible. I never thought I was going to be involved at all, even after that call. And I was like, oh, it sucks for Steve. He's going to be very disappointed someday.
I would have been.
But I also remember that was the moment in time that you first said, oh, and we should then start a gin program and get Tom Nickel to come be the master distiller. And of course, I'm like on my computer while we're having this phone call, and I'm like, who the hell is Tom Nickel? And I'm like, Nickelle? Nope, Nichol, Scottish spelling. And so I look it up and I'm like, the master distiller of Tanqueray? Who is this person I'm talking to on the phone in this nut job that thinks that the guy that is the master distiller of Tanqueray is going to quit Tanqueray to come be at a no-name distillery in Kansas City, USA? It was just absolutely nuts and insane to me. And so that was the moment in time that it was first planted. And then I'll never forget it. From that was 2012 to arguably it was probably 3 years later that I just got sick and tired of listening to Steve Olson. I was already involved. We were already running the company at that time. And to when I talked to you, I was on my honeymoon and you sent an email. And the email said, just got off the phone with Tom Nickel. I think he is interested in coming to Kansas City to CJ Rieger Co. to see about being our gin distiller,
to see a man about a job.
And I was so sick and tired of you making this claim that I just was like, I'm doing it. I'm calling Steve out. And I go, oh, Steve, that'd be great. I am very positive I had the email. I said, that'll be great. Why don't you go ahead and connect us and we'll just schedule his flights. And before I knew it, you had added him and you said, Tom, please see Andy's email. And Tom goes, yeah, that's great. I'm available. I think it was like May 20 to May 28. Here's my passport number. Here's this. And I just said, look, got him on the flight. And the day that we turned on the stills was the day that he was here, you were here, Dave Pickerel, who was our operating partner, who regretfully passed away in 2018, but he was the former master distiller of Maker's Mark.
My brother. our brother,
and Ron Cooper.
and Ron Cooper.
It was pretty special for us to be able to activate everything and turn it on with that incredibly esteemed group of individuals.